Thank you, sir. Wow.
The meeting will come to order. We are holding our regularly scheduled meeting held February 10th, 2009 at 9 a.m. At this time, I'd like to call on Stan Bowling, Planning Director, to give the invocation, and our County Attorney, Mr. William G. Collins II, will give the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Let's pray. Lord God, we come before you this morning together, and that is an amazing thing in and of itself. We, each and every one of us, come to you as a mixed bag. We have belief and unbelief. We have distraction and focus. We pause a moment this morning to focus. Your word says, taste and see that the Lord is good. And I would ask that you would enable each of us throughout today to do that, to take you in and to have your eyes. We ask that for our leaders too this morning, the decisions that they make, to see with your vision and to lift their vision higher. We also ask that you enable us to do, it says over and over again in your word that you give us abilities and gifts to do the good works you have prepared for us. We ask that you'd help us do that. And our leaders too. We ask that you would bring about good things this morning from the decisions that they're about to make. And we trust you with the results. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Bowling and Mr. Collins. Commissioners, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On the dais this morning was some backup material from the County Attorney's Office. This is dealing with an emergency ordinance related to some of our bond and security ordinances, and I'd like to add this under item 13B as an emergency addition, mainly because we have some letters of credit coming due very rapidly, and if we need to provide some relief here, I think we need to move quickly on this. I ask that we have this under item 13B.
13B would be
the attorney's
matters. Okay, just wanted to confirm that. Commissioners, as you know, it takes unanimous decision to do that. Do I have any objections? Seeing none. Anything else?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
I got a motion to approve the agenda as amended from Commissioner O'Brien. Do I have a second? Second. Got a second from Commissioner Fletcher. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. That moves us into the proclamations and presentations. We have a presentation by the Honorable Cynthia L. Cox, Circuit Judge. Welcome. Thank you for coming down.
Sorry I'm late. I haven't been to the new building. May it please the Commission, my name is Cynthia Cox, and I am a Circuit Judge in the 19th Circuit. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting a few of you, but many of you remember that I came before you in 2002 for support in one of our problem-solving courts, the drug courts, and at that time everyone knew that we had the need for a drug court, and said that there were no funds and that we couldn't do it, but on a wing and a prayer, we, with the support of the Commission through the Substance Abuse and Trust Fund for those that couldn't afford it, we did start our drug court, and that drug court has been very successful as of today. When I left Indian River County, Judge Canarak took it over, I believe, in 2005 and now, or 2006, and now Judge Pegg is doing it. It is very successful. So I wanted to bring you up to date on that, and thank you for the support of that. I am a circuit judge, which means that I serve the 4 counties, for those of you that don't know, but I am a resident and a taxpayer of Indian River County, and I've been blessed to have been placed back in Indian River County as of January of this year.
Welcome home.
So for the last, and I'm handling the family courts here in domestic violence and going back to St. Lucie County one day a week to handle our mental health court down in St. Lucie County. And that brings me to why I'm here. Being in felony court in both counties and family court, we see that not only substance abuse but mental health is a bigger problem in our communities and in the state, actually in the nation. And because of the lack of funding, our local county jails and prisons have been the largest mental health providers for the mentally ill, even back when Commissioner Wheeler was sheriff, I believe is when it all started. and it's been an ongoing problem. I've been working with some of the people in this room, and we do have some of the members of the collaborative here to support and to show their support, and I'm not going to take very long, but I wanted to just introduce you to the problem and let you know that I will be working on this diligently while I'm here in Indian River County, and I do plan to stay here. When we started, well, back in 2000 when we started working on this issue, we decided that St. Lucie County would be the model mental health court, and unfortunately it was the county with the lowest tax base. But St. Lucie County, we've I guess reinvented the wheel with St. Lucie County. We've had ups and downs, and we think we've got all the kinks out, and it's a very efficient court. To date, we've had 116 graduates. The St. Lucie County has saved over $4.3 million in the cost. We've applied for several grants, and the recidivism rate is less than 1%. We went over the population of 116 that had graduated, and this was from June of '06 until December of '08. And of those 116 graduates, from 2000 to 2008, they had 448 arrests. Since they entered mental health court, that same population only had 4. We calculated the tax savings at approximately $120 a day for these mentally ill at the jail, and the sheriff is here, and he could probably give you the better figure for Indian River County, but that's a state average, and the average length of stay is around $80. So every time a mentally ill inmate is arrested for a minor crime, it costs you, the taxpayers, and the commission $10,000 per inmate. The Supreme Court and the Department of Children and Families in 2007 put together a work group, and they came up with a report, which I will provide all of you, that has certain recommendations. And the recommendations require the criminal justice system and the local community stakeholders to work together to address this problem, to divert people from the jails, from the prisons, from the forensic facilities to the county community programs. And they also encourage and want the counties and community providers to promote certain initiatives. And I'm involved not only with the mental health court, but the crisis intervention training of law enforcement officers. Indian River County has had many graduates since we started that program, and that's just one element of this problem in our proposal. Anyway, I could go on for hours about this, and I just really wanted to introduce myself and my mission at this point. My next mission is to initiate and help support the community in addressing this problem in the most efficient way for our taxpayers and for the actual mentally ill inmates. The collaborative has been presented with an opportunity from the BJA, Bureau of Justice, no, I don't know what it is, BJA. There's several grant opportunities that we've presented, and the county has to apply for these grants. Many of them are 30% in-kind contributions where it really wouldn't have an impact. And I will provide more information to you about that, but I wanted to let you know that was something that we were considering and to get your support. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions, and I will try in the next month to arrange to meet with each of you individually and or a workshop, whatever your pleasure. Any questions?
Judge Cox, I take it the mental health collaboration is supporting this?
Well, the mental health collaborative, it has been, and they knew that I was coming back, and the goal was really to get a mental health court going in probably 2010 or 11. But when the opportunity for the grant came forward, we met last week, and it's a question of whether we apply for the planning grant or the implementation grant. So the reviews are mixed, and we have another meeting scheduled tomorrow to discuss the pros and cons and whether it's feasible, because the deadline's March the 3rd.
Okay, I think I'd look forward to, one, seeing the full grant application and seeing the full details and what the county would be putting up, but also I think some type of support from the mental health collaborative that this is the way we see things going, so kind of go through those channels.
Right, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten a little correspondence here in the Commissioners. I don't know if everybody had the opportunity to see it or not, but make sure that everybody doesn't have to be on board, but at least have a good coalition pulling in the right direction. I had the opportunity to meet with several individuals about exactly what you're talking about, and I believe one of them is a $50,000 grant, and the other one's a $200,000 grant. One's for planning, one's for implementation.
Right.
And far be it from me to be able to tell you which way to go with that, but I'm sure that your coalition, y'all can use your expertise and move forward.
Yeah, and whether or not we go with this grant, there's many other grants and many other opportunities for mental health courts. Like I said, we started the drug court here with no funding. In St. Lucie County, we initially started with no funding. We got the reinvestment grant just last year, and we've expanded. So whether or not we accept that grant, I still want to educate and work together with the Commission and the community to get this going, whether it's this year or 2 years from now.
Absolutely. Any questions, Commissioners?
And I also look forward to the meeting and discussing this further, Your Honor. And my concern about the granting is the length of the grant, to start up the grant, to get this program started, and what the taxpayers will be looking at in the aftermath. And I would like you to also include the sheriff in every step of the process and discussion, and so that we can make the most formidable opinion on it and move forward if we can, knowing that the program will be as supported as much as possible with any future grants as well.
Absolutely, and I forgot to make that disclaimer. The sheriff has been very busy the last month, and I have not had the opportunity to meet with him on his position, and that's why I specifically did not reference his position, because I really don't know what it is, and I have to sit down with him as well. But, of course, all of the stakeholders have to work together, otherwise it won't work, and we will do all of that. Probably will slow down a little bit, but because it was rushed, I wanted to bring it to your attention before you heard rumors about it. But we're not going to do anything quickly.
And I appreciate that, Your Honor, and I see that the sheriff and his spokesman is here as well, and someone in the grant writing area as well. So maybe perhaps this might be a great window of opportunity.
And I did want to mention Jason Brown was at the meeting, and he does have a copy of the grant.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
part of the copy of the grant.
All right, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Forward to reviewing it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that moves us to item B, which is the presentation of the Governor's Points of Light Award recognition, recognizing Deputy Teddy Floyd for his commitment to volunteer service and his positive impact on the community. The presentation of the Governor's Points of Light Award, which is given to an outstanding volunteer in the community, is being given to Deputy Teddy Floyd based on a nomination sent in by Commissioner Gary Wheeler. Emmanuel Tormes, a Special Assistant to the Governor's Office, will be presenting the award along with Commissioner Wheeler. Teddy is also invited to a reception on February 12th at the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee to honor Black History Month. Deputy Floyd.
Teddy, if you'd come to the podium, what I'd like to do is read the letter from the governor, and then myself and Mr. Tormes will present it to you. And then also Darcy's here. I'd like to take a couple of pictures with us and with the sheriff and Mr. Tormes for your scrapbook. Anyway, this is the letter from Governor Charlie Crist. It says, "Dear Mr. Floyd, congratulations on being named a Points of Light in honor of Black History Month. Many people in our society give of their time and talents, but some are shining examples for all of us. Thank you for being one of these special volunteers. The Governor's Points of Light Award, managed by Volunteer Florida Foundation, is awarded each week to a Florida resident demonstrating exemplary service to the community. Nominees are reviewed by a panel of judges composed of leaders in the area of volunteerism and community service. The volunteer time you give to the people of Florida and your community enhance the lives of many and sets a fine example for the important contributions each and every citizen of our state can make. Congratulations, and thank you again for your dedication and service to all our citizens and our communities and our state. And sincerely, Charlie Crist, Governor." And I'd like to say, when Teddy worked for me when I was sheriff, there wasn't anything that he wouldn't participate in, particularly to help kids. I've seen Teddy take money out of his own pocket and buy shoes for kids. And Teddy's, well, I think Teddy's almost a legend in this county already. He was a dancing deputy, got worldwide recognition for that, but Teddy's just a great guy. So I appreciate you, Kevin.
What do you want first?
I'm going to go first.
You,
Yeah, stand in front of the, by the podium.
we'll take a brief recess, and then we'll reconvene after we get finished taking pictures.
Am I going?
Yeah. We'll come back to order. That moves us to the presentation of a proclamation honoring 2/11 Awareness Week, February 11th to the 17th, 2009. Here to receive this will be Ms. Paige Woodward. Welcome, Ms. Woodward. And to read this will be Commissioner Joseph Flesher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being here to accept this proclamation. I have the honor of presenting this proclamation, which reads, honoring 2/11 Awareness Week, February 11th through 17th, 2009. Whereas many times when individuals need help with meeting life's basic needs and they are not sure where to turn, and whereas Palm Beach and the Treasure Coast are fortunate to have 211 Palm Beach Treasure Coast, a nonprofit agency that has been in the community for more than 35 years, providing information and referral on community resources, telephone counseling for distressed callers, and suicide intervention. And whereas 211 Palm Beach Treasure Coast will be recognized as the central linkage point in our community, providing individuals with the information and support they need to solve their problems. And whereas staff and volunteers of 211 Palm Beach Treasure Coast, available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, assisted over 173,000 callers last year in need of information, referrals to social service agencies, or someone to talk to. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board recognizes February 11th through 17th, 2009 as 211 Awareness Week in Indian River County, and urges all citizens to be aware of the only phone number they need to know to access all the information on over 4,200 programs in our community that provide assistance in such areas as insurance, volunteering, food, daycare, mental health counseling, support groups, home health care, financial assistance, and many others. Adopted this 10th day of February 2009 by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River, Florida, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Thank you, Ms. Woodward.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of 211 Palm Beach Treasure Coast, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you commissioners, as well as the County of Indian River, for declaring February 11 through 17 as 211 Awareness Week. While 211 staff answered more than, as we said, 173,000 phone calls last year, we answered 8,400 referrals were made to 595 agencies and programs in this county alone. We certainly understand that there are many more residents living in our community who don't know how to go about accessing the much-needed services. For this reason, we truly appreciate your continued support in helping to make and educate the public aware of the multitude of services that 211 provides. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for the wonderful availability of this program. And in addition, how are we staffed for the upcoming year? Are you looking for volunteers or any assistance with the program?
Sure, we can take volunteers all the time. I'm the lone soldier here in Indian River County, and am getting busier every week with more opportunities for education and presentations to civic groups, to community groups, to help people become aware of 211 and the multitude of things that 211 provides for our constituency.
Well, it's time for the plug then. If you want to provide a number for the community so that they can call you other than 211, is there another number that they can reach you
Absolutely.
at so they can volunteer?
My direct line here, and my office is in the United Way building. My number is 567-8900, extension 26.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
and
very
congratulations.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me do page.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That concludes our proclamations and presentations. Now we move on to the minutes of the special call meeting held on mining LDRs, Chapter 911, 934, 971, held December 8, 2008.
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner O'Brien. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Item 7 is informational only. Move us to the consent agenda. Any items that you'd like to have pulled from the consent agenda? I would like to pull item I. Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item J.
Jay?
Mr. Chairman, I'll follow with item K.
Okay. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner Flesher to amend the consent, or to approve the consent agenda as amended. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Now, item I, which is the approval of the bid contract for State Road 60 utility improvements on 82nd Avenue to I-95. Commissioners, the only concern that I have, and from what I understand on this, Mr. Olson, is that they have 90 days to get that done.
That's correct.
And the only concern that I have about that, the 90 days doesn't bother me. It's what could happen if the event that, I'm hearing from several different individuals that's a rather aggressive schedule to be able to accomplish, and I'm concerned about the delays that may be associated with the contractor doing the actual road work. For example, I believe it's community asphalt, if I'm not mistaken, and any fees that they may try to pass on to us if this utility work's not done in the 90-day time frame.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. Let me first of all say, this is what we call Phase 3 of 3 phases on State Road 60, beginning from 66. This last section takes us from 82nd to 95. The Utilities Department has imposed a 90-day time element associated with the project. It's our understanding that the DOT portion with community asphalt will begin approximately the end of June, first part of July. We believe this 90 days that we have imposed gives us about a 45-day cushion associated with it. We are meeting with the contractor this afternoon, and the idea is to ensure that it will get done in time. In speaking with the contractor ahead of time, we asked the question, do you have enough staff to basically man the project to get it done in a sufficient length of time? It's our understanding, and we'll confirm that this afternoon, that the 90 days should be quite sufficient. They have promised they'll be putting in multiple crews. That section is actually the easiest of all of the sections between 66 and 95 that we've been working on, so we feel fairly comfortable it's not going to be an issue. The contractor does have liquidated damages that can be assessed to them if they go beyond it. That's assessments that we would impose on the contractor, not based on community asphalt to us. So we feel fairly comfortable that they can meet this deadline. I have to say that with any of these types of projects, it's always extremely difficult. You try to predict where the conflicts are as best you can. But the good news, as I say, this particular section is the easiest of all of them, has the least conflicts, and I feel fairly comfortable we'll be all right.
Mr. Olson, with the damages that we have, or have the opportunity to impose on the utility relocates, is that dollar for dollar what community asphalt would be able to charge the state for delaying the project?
I can't say exactly at this point. I haven't seen what their liquidated damages are within their contract, but I think, like I say, dollar for dollar, the assessment would be that if the contractor, our contracts are very specific, and we've had other situations where if the contractor, through their negligence, causes delays on the other contractor, we pass those costs back to the original, our contractor. So we're not going to absorb the costs of damages based on the inability of the contractor that we hire to make the contract done in time. So we have protections built into the contract already like that.
Okay. Commissioners, this is just something that I think really, it concerns me that we have almost a third-party paying system in this. We have the state using our money in their account to pay contractors that they've hired, again, with our money. And so it's that we have overfunded, as a matter of fact. It came in under budget, but they still required a lot more money over and above the estimated amount. And so it's something that I plan on keeping on top of, and I'll keep you informed if there's anything that changes.
One thing is a point of clarification. The components related to the utilities are not covered by the payback. Those are funded out of the utilities fund on this, and just to clarify that aspect.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I can't make a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Flesher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of consent item I, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item J. Commissioner Sloy?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I pulled this because it seemed like there was too little information in the backup. It's relating to the county's grant for a $4.7 million project, and there was a ranking of 3 people who submitted proposals, but little more. So, do you want to start asking questions, or do you want to? And I thought the next item on the agenda, consent agenda, is an item for $6,600 and has about 10 pages of backup. This one, I didn't realize it until after talking with Mr. Keating yesterday, that the potential fee is up to 6% of the grant, as I understand it. I mean, it's potential fee is all I'm saying.
Yes, I'm Bob Keating, County Community Development Director, and this is the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. The federal government is providing money, in this case through the state, for communities that have a high number of foreclosures. In our case, we're a little ahead of the curve. We came to the board about 6 or 8 weeks ago and got authorization to go out and solicit consultants to administer the grant for the county. So we're going through the request for proposal process, the CCNA process. Now in this case, we can ask for costs, and we did ask for costs through the process. And the top 2 ranked consultants were real close in their costs. They were within about 5%. The third one was significantly more. But we will be negotiating a price with the top-ranked consultant and come back to you with a contract after we have negotiated that. But you're correct. The maximum amount of the grant, and it's $4.6 million grant, is 6.8% of that grant that can be used for administrative costs. The initial estimates of costs from the 2 top-ranked consultants were in the 4.3 to 4.5% range. And we are going to negotiate with them to see if we can get the best price possible. And we'll be back to you most likely the first meeting in March.
Okay, because that cost information was not in the backup. It generally is in the backup for these type of things. And if it's 6.8%, then that's potentially over $300,000 for the grantee. And you said it looks like about what?
It looks like about $200,000.
Okay,
200
so
to 210.
Again, $210,000 I think is a material amount of money and something we'd like to see. And another question is, given that the contract amount is not yet set, I was just curious as to why we'd only be talking with one firm initially as opposed to all 3 firms, or at least the 2 firms that provided the lowest initial indication of cost.
We're following the CCNA format, the consultants' competitive negotiation process, whereby the firms are ranked based on their quality, and then negotiation starts with the highest ranked firm, and then if an acceptable contract can't be negotiated, that firm gets discarded and we go to the next firm. That's the way the CCNA process works.
You will see this again. We just simply want to let you know how they were ranked for the CCNA, and we're going to bring this back with all the information. We just want to disclose before we started the 3 firms that were chosen, and now we're going to start the negotiations, come back to you with all the numbers and the figures. Those have not been settled yet.
Understood they haven't been settled, but again, getting some information initially sets a flag off to watch it. I mean, if I was reading this quickly, I'd think it might be a $10,000 item, and it turns out to be an item of over $200,000. That I'd like to get the indication of that early in the process rather than later in the process.
We'll put more funding information in. That will come. This has to come back to you again once we choose and the rankings. We just wanted to show you the rankings before we moved ahead, because there has been a lot of people visit the commission, and therefore that was one of my suggestions. We don't always bring the ranking, but I wanted to this time.
Thank you.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure on item J?
Can I make the motion for that?
You sure can.
Okay, I'd be happy to approve item J.
Thank you. Got a motion from Commissioner Solari to approve item J, and has been seconded by Commissioner Wheeler. No further discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item K, Commissioner Fleischer.
I think I pulled that, Mr.
Was it?
Chairman.
Forgive me. I knew it was on this side. Thanks. Commissioner O'Brien, yes.
Yeah, thank you. This is dealing with the docks at Boat Club Island, and this was before us about a month and a half ago, and the state, to repair the docks and make them functional again, the state wanted us to apply for a submerged lands lease, and all the backup data and surveys and seagrass surveys. It would have been a very expensive process for the county to go through just to repair an existing recreational facility. At the time, we were under the understanding that the state DEP would work with us on an alternate format. However, the state local DEP office in Orlando wrote us and said, no, we don't want to work with the county. As a matter of fact, if we don't remove these structures, you're deemed an engaged in an act of trespass and other threatening stuff. And I think this is just the most terrible example of a bunch of bureaucratic crap going on. And I think we need to write Ralph Popple, Debbie Mayfield, Ken Pruitt, and Senator Herodopoulos, and tell them they need to talk to DEP and work with us to get this done. I think it's totally ridiculous that the state agency is dictating to us, threatening us with trespass, when all we want to do is provide some docks out there for the recreational boating community. So I would like to move that we table any action on this and send a letter to our 4 representatives and tell them to get this straightened out pronto.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very good point. I do remember you bringing this to our attention, and it's almost like a bureaucracy out of control with little common sense.
Exactly.
And I'm in agreement with you, and will, on behalf of the commission, in the event that your motion passes, I will gather input from all the commissioners in drafting the letter, and I'll sign it as chair.
And work with our legal department.
Absolutely.
And Roland or Bob, and go ahead and sign it and send it off. And absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, Commissioner Wheeler.
No, this is kind of the opposite of the way it works. Usually they send us down, tell us to build the docks at our expense, and we won't fund it.
And if they did that, it'd be probably better. But, is there any further discussion? Did that motion receive a second? Okay.
Commissioner Solari.
Commissioner Solari. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner. That concludes the consent agenda. Now we will move on to public. There are no public hearings, public discussion items. Request to speak from Frank Zork regarding investigation of contamination. Mr. Zork, welcome. Mr. Zork is not here. Oh, there he is. Okay. Yep. Welcome, Mr. Zork.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board and the public, I just was handed the copy of the answer from Geotech. The first copy I got about 20 minutes ago was not complete. There was a page missing, but now I've got a complete copy. Do you have the complete copy?
Mr. Zork, I saw something on my desk this morning, and I believe that's what you have, and so what is the date of that?
The date was the 6th of February, but somehow they missed a page, but she's got it now.
Okay.
The copy I have here has it.
Okay. I have not looked through it, no, sir.
You want me to just go through it?
No, sir. No, sir, I'll be able to do that, but there's no need in doing that on TV right now. But if you have something you'd like to speak about regarding the investigation of the contamination, you're more welcome to do so.
Well, I would like to address a couple of their answers, if I could.
Would you like to meet with me afterwards to do that?
Pardon?
Would you like for me to meet with me afterwards to do that? It'll be a whole lot more effective. That way I can perhaps have somebody from staff in there and actually get your questions answered versus having to track you down and get the questions. And just like we did last time, I had to find out, I don't know, the questions wound up. They weren't in my office whenever I got there, so I had to track your questions down and get them to the right people to be able to answer them for you. So.
Their letter is giving answers to my questions, that's all. But you want me to come back again then? Is that what you mean?
No, I'd rather you and I sit down and let's try to get answers to what you think is wrong or what needs to be answered better.
Well, they need answers to some of their answers, and I don't know.
That's fine. But this is the absolute worst opportunity for me to be able to get results for you on something like that with them not even here and not even having staff here to answer any of the questions. I mean, it would be very ineffective and not an effective use of meeting time.
What do you suggest?
If you'll hang tight, I don't think this will be a long meeting at all. I said if you'll hang tight after the meeting, I don't think this will be very long at all.
Okay.
See if we can't sit down and get some answers for you.
Okay.
All right? Thank you, Mr. Zork.
Thank you.
Our next public discussion item is a request to speak from Fred Mensing regarding the repeal of the resolution 2008-043. Welcome, Mr. Mensing. Please give your name and address for the record.
Fred Mensing, 7580 129th Street, Sebastian. Bear with me a minute. I've got a ton of stuff to hand out to you.
You okay? Paramedics on standby.
Pass these down. Goes all the way to the clerk of the court.
Okay.
This is future reading.
I'll let you agree with that. Been working, Fred.
Mr. Collins, I'm assuming that you haven't had a chance to look at any of these, have you?
Sir? Thank you, Fred.
You haven't seen any of these?
Can we get Elmo turned on, please?
Yeah. Can somebody tickle my Elmo?
I've never worked Elmo, so I'm...
As soon as if you put something on, they'll switch it.
Yep. Just set it down there, Fred.
Good.
Is there a... Yep. What particularly on there do you want us to look at, Fred? That way he can get it zoomed in.
I guess he's probably looking at the pond area, right?
Okay. I am here, and there is about 1/3 of the paperwork that will be involved in a lawsuit against the county if we do not get a repeal of Resolution 2008-043. The cause is county's never maintained the property. The county gave Simone a permit to clear 990 feet of said land after receiving a sealed survey to the land and a deed. Mr. Carey, who started this action, is a proven liar. Recode matters in Rose 4. He is a licensed contractor who built a building over a breezeway between buildings and added a second floor to it 31 months ago, and apparently nothing can be done about it. Carey has changed his mind 3 times. He acquired an easement from 129th Street over the 60-foot strip for assembler prior to buying the property. That easement was from my wife and myself. Acknowledging Mensing's ownership of the strip by getting the easement gave him the ability to get the permits to build. He filed to have the county abandon 330 by 60 feet of the strip, adding half to his lot 16. The other half would go to Mrs. Seibert on lot 6 of the Mayadell subdivision. But on finding out that she would not cooperate and she would deed her half to me so we would not be cut off, that action apparently is on hold. I mean, he paid his money and nothing's ever been done. That was a year and a half ago. Carey refused to abandon the use of 129th Street, an action that a state agency dealing with land use changes granted him. If the county got the 60-foot strip, paved it to 130th Street, and paved 130th Street to the presently paved part of 130th Street.
Fred, let me ask you this. If we make a decision today on this, there's a chance that all of this could go away. Now, on the other side of that, if we make a decision, there's a chance that all this could go away for the other side. But I appreciate your presentation, but really what I'd like to try to do is this has kind of come back to us from, and really has come to a head because of a decision that the county attorney was asking us to make. What I would like to do, instead of getting the full history on it, we've kind of been through this, and have had the opportunity to know the lawsuit that you had with the county and the settlement involved with it, and declaring the road and all that kind of stuff. But the county attorney's come to us with asking us to have a proposed settlement. What I'd like to do is see if the county attorney has had the opportunity to get with community development and find out some of the information on what he was proposing last time on the settlement, to see if we can get this to go away. And if we can get it to go away with the settlement, I don't mean to minimize your presentation, but it might not be necessary. And I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it may not. Can we have the opportunity? Would you allow me to do that real quick and just see if...
I've not had the opportunity to get with the departments and see what their position is.
Okay. Fred, I'm going to...
Well, I will be brief. Looking at Elmo, let's see how this works as a pointer. This building here, according to Mr. Nolte's records, was placed on the tax roll in 1964. It was built as a fish hatchery, and at that time, all the surveyors were using the obsolete or improper plat of the Fleming grant, which did not include a road. I don't know what kind of permits were issued or anything. I am in the process of trying to get a reverse mortgage. The Bank of America reverse mortgage department in Bellevue requires that all zoning requirements be met, including setbacks. Because of that, they require that building to be removed based on how things are today. The most recent low appraisal is now $39,000 to replace the building. We're looking at about $12,000 to $14,000 to remove it. There's a great question about how heavy the slab underneath it is. There are no available plans, and the people that have looked at it have concluded it's probably a 2-foot thick slab under the building. It's a concrete block building with a 10-foot ceiling and a truss wooden roof. It's going to have to be removed. The mobile home over here is history, so that doesn't matter to us. We're going to have to proceed on this in short notice in order to close the mortgage. There is 15% of the gross mortgage available to make the corrections after closing, but that is one of the things that will have to be, contracted and done immediately. Unless we resolve this, if the building stays, we're going to be in litigation over having to destroy a building and whether we had a right to have the building there and so forth for the cost of the building and removal at a minimum. And then the privacy issue being degraded by having a public street where we don't want it is the other issue. And I have been advised by the owner, by my deed, of the westerly 900 feet of that right-of-way, Mr. Dave Butler, who is in Costa Rica, that he will join in a suit to have the whole thing revert back to private property. And as I say, we've left all this information with you. Your attorney can review it, but I'm asking that you put this on fast track. If not, we're going to have to get into court now for my protection.
Okay. Mr. Collins, you're familiar with the legal aspects of this. I don't really need to comment. What I would like to have, Commissioners, if I could have your indulgence, is direct the county attorney to come back with something at the next meeting to be able to move this off center for or against Mr. Mensing's position on this, so that he can pursue the opportunities with his mortgage, and we can make an informed decision to move in a direction that's in the best interest of the county. Commissioners, y'all good with that?
We need a motion on that, or?
Well, consensus is fine. It's just, he's given a lot of information here that Mr. Collins needs to look at it and get with community development. And yes, Commissioner Wheeler.
If possible, I'd like to see the Attorney's Office come back with a recommendation, but also options if there are any.
Clearly. I mean, and that's not unusual. I think that was really what I was expecting, yeah. Any other discussion?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, the other thing I would ask of Mr. Mensing is, I don't think it's appropriate for one citizen to come up and call another citizen a liar. You may feel that way, but I don't think it's appropriate to say it here in this format. And also, I don't think it's appropriate. Some of the letters you delivered to the commission office had very disparaging remarks about one of the commissioners, and I don't think that's appropriate either. So as we work through this, I would ask that you act in a very responsible and semi-professional manner, and let's not resort to name-calling, please.
I'm sorry that I feel about a commissioner the way I do, and I think there are other people that do. I forgot to congratulate Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Fletcher, Mr. Davis, and Mr. Solari on their uniquely professional meeting last week at the Sebastian City Hall, and I just was probably the best public meeting I've been to on a crisis issue. I mean, I can't commend the four of you and the public that was there for a finer conducted, 6 hours or something. I want to thank you for that.
Well, just as we move through this, let's keep that same level of civility, please.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for those remarks there, Commissioner O'Brien. I was going to get with Mr. Mensing after the meeting and ask him to refrain from some of that, so thank you. Commissioners, if you would, probably save the backup that Mr. Mensing went through the efforts of doing that way.
Yes.
When this does come back, he won't have to provide that again. Thank you, Mr. Mensing. Next is the county administrators matters. Mr. Baird.
Yes, we have a request to waive the fees for the rowing, and that's a commission decision. So I've got it in front of you. The one thing that there's a lot of labor involved in putting up the canopy, and we'd prefer not to have to do that, but this is a commission decision. We are getting more and more requests now that we are giving it free, and one of the problems I am having is overtime because it's on the weekends. I will tell you that.
Do we have to use county staff to do this?
Well, yeah, because people don't know how to do it. Plus, if they get hurt setting it up, we're liable. It's our property. That's another thing is we're having problems with the people that, when we're waiving it, they're not getting insurance either. So we're having a problem with all of this right now. When we came up with the cost, it was basically the cost of labor to set it up, haul it, and all that. And it's up to the commission what they'd like to do.
My position's been clear on this all along, Commissioners. Unfortunately, I can't make a motion. And if you'd like for me to reiterate my position, I'd be more than happy to.
Please go ahead, Mr. Chair.
You know, this is some of the things that I believe that we could do as a community to help out these organizations. This is probably something they're going to raise a little money at. It's going to bring people into the community. They're going to spend a few dollars here, and that clearly outweighs any costs associated therewith.
Mr. Chair, that's my exact sentiments too. We've had to pull back in so many areas, and it appears that in this future year of uncertainty, we're going to have to pull back even further. And I think that some of the nonprofit organizations and many of the entities that are doing such positive work in our community at little or no cost, we should be able to contribute. I do share some concerns about the fact that the equipment is paid for, but the setup costs, I'd like to see them defrayed. And again, I believe last week we had this discussion, and I believe that probably by next week we will have at least one more discussion about it, and in weeks to come, I believe that this is going to be a continuing concern. I'd like to look at it in the future to perhaps maybe discuss with the sheriff if we can maybe encompass some inmate assistance to defray the cost, because the bleachers and the other equipment is the people's property. It has been paid for by tax dollars, and I believe that we should be able to use it in the best spirit and going forward, most certainly during these stressful economic times. But I will like to seek opportunities to defray the cost of the labor, and if there's any recommendation that you have, Joe, I'd like to see you bring that forward too.
I do have to disclose one thing, and it doesn't bother me, but I did have a call saying that this event is not in Indian River County. And I did receive a call, so I have to disclose that because some taxpayer's going to call the press.
And just to let the people know where it is, you could throw a stone into Indian River County from where it is. I mean, this is clearly, the C-54 is the Brevard Indian River County line, and granted, it's about 50 feet on the other side.
It is in the Brevard County area. It is in Brevard County. I've had the opportunity to enjoy, as many citizens have, in the regatta, and I believe that it has a tremendous regional impact. We have competition coming in from Lauderdale and points north that most certainly will represent some rooms, some accommodations, some local tourism impact. Some of the families that attend do spend the overnight and make a weekend out of it, and I just believe it's a fantastic experience to see the youth of this county compete regionally, and I urge everybody to attend. It's a great day, and it's probably one of the rare times that you'll be able to see the racing shells, the boats here, other than going to a collegiate game or to go to the Olympics, and many of us will probably not get to visit the Olympics or to go to a college unless we have one of our own in that college to see a racing event. It's a well-attended event, it's well-organized, and just as another note, I believe it was about a year ago when it was identified during a discussion that the C-54 canal is not the dividing line for the county, and I believe that was brought up at a previous county commission meeting where we have had a cooperative with trash removal and other things with our county staff as well. In addition, that the Brevard County has also extended a lot more support after identifying that this was, in fact, Brevard County. And there is a tremendous amount of parental support and volunteer assistance with this, and I believe that it's a very spirited event, and I see one of the leaders of the team here, or one of the bandmasters of the volunteers and the support for this team, and I think the youth of this community are very blessed to have a parent and a citizen that's before us now.
Commissioner, was that a motion?
Mr. Chair?
That is a motion.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Excuse me. Yeah, I have some concerns about this, and I think, at least from my perspective, to put this in context with what we've done in the past, I think first, if we're going to continue to do this, as I said last week, I don't like it coming to us one item at a time, one this month, one next month, another one the week after that. We're depending basically on the presentation and the mood. We either approve or deny. I think if we're going to do this, we need to be realistic about it. It's a contribution to charity, whatever it is, nonprofits, and there ought to be a line item in the budget and an estimate as to what you want to spend on that, and when the money's gone, it's gone, if we choose to go that way. But I do think that, all of these things that come in front of us are good things, but, the taxpayers are paying for this, and it costs money, and it's not in the budget, and it continues to grow. We do it for one, and then there's another, and another, and another. So we either need to realistically deal with this, or we need to stick with our policy that we have now and have rentals and giving nonprofits a discount.
Okay. Any other discussion? Commissioner Solari?
I won't repeat Commissioner Wheeler's statements on this, but mine mirror his. I also was unclear from the packet whether the request was just for the stage or the stage and canopy. Yes.
All we need is a stage.
Okay, because again, my comments would have been similar to last week, where if Florida kids can go out, I think they can go out in the sun. Mm-hmm. But it seems from the backup that we've generally had a policy of renting these out to profits and nonprofits, and unless, as Commissioner Wheeler says, we want to specifically change that policy, then I don't see how we can be for giving this away again.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And again, I appreciate those comments, and I just wanted to point out, now that we're looking at just stand, Joe, how much will that impact us for the stand? Is it just a few $100s?
Yeah, I think it's a $300 charge. I mean,
$300, and as we heard from Judge Cynthia Cox earlier this morning, the amount and cost factor of housing some of our individuals as in citizens in the jail complex, and with that, knowing this for $300, and we also know that these sporting events are probably the number one catalyst to prevent people from going into an alternate area and perhaps maybe in a negative area and providing a burden. And I believe that $300 at this point is a small burden for us to look at. As far as addressing the concerns about the cost factors, I believe that I think it's unfair to any one entity to draw a line in the sand in midstream at this point. I believe that we have to bring this back and review it, and yes, set a budget, or perhaps look at an alternative means for the setup so that we can continue to do whatever we can for the nonprofits, but by the same token defray the cost to the taxpayers.
Commissioner O'Brien?
I'm kind of torn between the two sides here. I recognize the need. We need to provide some support to our nonprofits this year. It is a tough time, and these are all worthy causes. I do have concerns from our park and recreation folks who see us waiving the fees, and then they hear talks of layoffs, and their fear is we might lose our job because you guys aren't collecting the fees. I think that's a very valid concern that they have going forward, so I want to make sure we cover our costs there. I don't have a big issue with the Brevard County thing. I think anybody going to this event is going to get off the interstate at the 512, and they'll stop and gas up and food up and pay sales tax and gas tax in our county. So I don't think the issue is the 50 feet on the Brevard County line. I agree with what Commissioner Wheeler said. I think we need to either have a policy and stick to it and make a decision what we're going to do here going forward. My only concern is we're subsidizing these nonprofits with taxpayer dollars, but those individual taxpayers, whatever that cause is, may or may not want to support that particular cause. And so by waiving these fees, we are inducing taxpayer support when they may not want it. So, they're actually, since they don't have their 501c3 status, they would have to be paying the $600 charge for the canopy without stage. Maybe as a compromise, we could offer them the nonprofit rate and knock it down to $300 and still cover our overtime costs. So I think that's kind of where I'm leaning.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve the use. Is there anything you'd like to add before we move? And please give your name and address for the record.
My name is Jim Rittenauer. I'm 7250 49th Street in Vero Beach. Basically, what I'd like to say is this program started only a year ago. Sebastian River High School, and it was a non-funded the school gets no money, or the kids get no money from the state for this because it's non-scholastic. But we have a rowing club, so all the money is raised by the parents through help of either the Frog Leg Fest or car washes or so forth. So we started this event, and we brought 8 teams, including ourselves, for the first year out of C-54. It was our first one, turned out okay. But we noticed that when Brevard County came down and did the Brevard Cup the following week, that they brought in a stage. It was really nice, had a PA system set up. And we quite didn't have that. And they only had 3 teams there. So what happened was we saw what other teams are doing, went to these other events, saw how they were doing it, and we got more schools involved this year, and we grew 35%. We got 11 teams committed so far. We have put together, we work with the Treasure Coast Sports Commission. We put out a packet of the motels they can stay at to bring money into the community. Food, lodging is all set up. We know for sure at this time, we have one coming from Miami that has reserved the Best Western. They got 33 rooms there. We have another one coming from Jacksonville. But we have schools from as far as Miami, being Baylin and Jacksonville coming. And we have other schools that might be getting hotels too. So we're going to try to make this a 2-day event in the next year. We have 15 schools interested. 11 have signed up this time. So it is a growing thing. We plan on bringing money and funding in. But we are brand new, and how we come up with the cost for this is we charged $150 this year. There's 11 teams. EMTs are $75 an hour for 9 hours. Portlets are $80 a piece for $130 for portlet, and medals are about $500. We're at a loss this year, but we are growing interest, and we want to make this nice enough that word gets around that it grows and we can become a 2-day event. So because we haven't got our 501c3, we really don't have income except for what we get out in the community. We're trying to make this Indian River County and prestigious, that they want to come back and they want to tell how great this event was to the other teams that weren't there. So we're kind of representing Indian River County here, but we're doing it all on our own. And because we are brand new, and I understand your positions too, they all are very valid. But that's what our position was on this was, we have to weigh the factors and do what we can do with and do without what we can, but we want to represent Indian River County and make it look like a great put-on event.
Jim, I understand exactly what you're trying to get accomplished and fully support of it, and I've seen the crowds you're talking about. I've been in Marsh Landing whenever they come in. at the local restaurants, and the Best Westerns like you're talking about. I'd love to help this grow. This is the kind of stuff that I think as a community, that whenever we look at the assets that we have to be able to get people inside this community to spend dollars and then leave, there's not a better, this is just one of the many facets that I think that we really need to push forward with, and I really hope that my colleagues would waive that fee for you or find some kind of a solution to help you grow this into at least a 2-day event for the future.
No, Mr. Chairman, maybe this is something we ought to look at funding through the TDC. Since it is tourism related, that should now become a line item in the TDC budget to fund these kind of events.
And you know what? That may be exactly the appropriate way of doing something like that. And I'll comment more on the overtime after we make a decision on this. But let's, Mr. Kennedy, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Davis, Chairman, and the board. Andrew Kennedy, Proctor Properties. We were just talking amongst ourselves here. My understanding is it's $300 shortfall.
$300 for it? Is that what we were looking at charging?
That'd be the nonprofit rate.
If we grant them that, yes.
We were just kicking around the idea, each of us throwing $50 in or thereabouts to cover that. It seems like a fantastic opportunity. And I think Representative Popple's been real
working on the sculling facility
initiative, and anything to use that area the way it should be is, I think, a fantastic thing. So I just wanted to mention that. I can give you my card, and the other gentleman's back here.
Y'all handle the $300?
Thank you.
Barely.
Barely? I'll help with that. I'll
help with that too. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Yes. Okay. Well, I tell you what, we've got a motion on the floor right now to waive the fee. Let's go ahead and vote on this, and then we'll see where it winds up. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Aye. Nay.
Well, that's okay. That was 3-2. The motion fails with Commissioner O'Brien, Wheeler, Slaughter dissenting. Okay, Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move forward and incorporate Mr. Kennedy's benevolent expression by all the individuals, and I trust that all of us would like to help. I know that I will, and you said
that's
you will.
At the nonprofit rate?
Then that would be at the nonprofit rate.
Okay.
I'll second that. Just those that do contribute, I'd like to see us get a list of that so we can publicly acknowledge their contribution to the community on the follow-up on this.
Okay. We have a motion to grant them the nonprofit rate. Is there any further discussion? The motion was by Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Don't leave. See Mr. Kennedy. Well, and
get him before he runs out.
Yeah, there you go.
I believe most of us will be able to handle the balance, Jim.
Yeah.
Commissioners, I don't want to be bringing this forward every week. I will say that now we've got churches asking for them free, so we need have inquiry.
Well, this more. There's so many of these that have come before us on the I think Commissioner O'Brien's idea. If it's something, if it's bringing beds in or people in to stay or on an event, that we can justify a $300 expenditure out of that, we should. One thing that does bother me, and I remember this with the school district, was whenever they'd have field trips, and I don't know what our policy is with our contracts obligations with the union, but we had, for example, bus drivers. The senior bus drivers had first dibs on the overtime, which was for the field trips, and it made it so you really had your most expensive employees taking chunks out of good things and being paid for the for the field trips. Now, and I don't know what our language is on that specific thing, but I can't help but think that if we have one person in charge and some help from the trustees at the jail, that the sheriff would probably help us get our labor costs down as much as we possibly can.
Sure. Also, I think, if they're school events, the school has equipment too, like PAs, and they should be supplying. They're coming to us, and we really probably should push it back the area they're from.
No, I don't want to give them the government runaround. I want to help them grow their program as best we possibly can within reason. And so, and I think we've got a responsibility, in my opinion, to do just that.
I'd like to see us, as I said earlier, put this in as a line item in our budget, follow our policy until our budget's done at least, and then you know what you've got to spend, and if you spend it, fine. When it's gone, because we sit here at budget time and cut a lot of programs, and Mr. Baird and his staff really sliced some programs the last 2 years, and we've cut our budget way back, and then these things come up individually, sound like a great idea, and we start pulling this from contingency.
Yep.
And it's hard to sit here and tell people no when they're promoting something that's positive for the community, but I think we need to either address it or we need to stick with our policy.
Any further discussion, Commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move on now. That concludes the county administrative matters. Community development status on stowaway storage sign issue. Keating, welcome.
Good morning again. Back in your January 20th meeting, Mr. Todd Marshall came here and spoke to you under matters by the public, and he's a part owner of Stowaway Storage that's located up on US 1. And at that time, he had indicated that he would like the board to put a moratorium on sign code enforcement. And really, as he went on and he talked to us afterwards, that isn't really what he wanted. What he wants really is more visibility for his business. So at that meeting, staff indicated that we thought that the business could accommodate more signage and that would meet with Mr. Marshall and report back to you. We did meet with Mr. Marshall. We had a real good meeting with him. We had analyzed his site and determined that he can have a significant amount more signage than he has right now. So we went over that with Mr. Marshall. He actually, there are some options in our sign code, but he can have at least another US 1 sign, another Old Dixie sign. The signs can be a little bigger. They can be closer to the right-of-way. He can trim his landscaping to make the signs visible. He can put in directional signs. So we discussed a lot of alternatives with Mr. Marshall, and he indicated he's going to pursue some of those. But he said what he really wanted was a changeable copy sign. And that's one type of sign that right now the county doesn't allow in the various corridors that we have in the county. We've designated a number of corridors primarily for aesthetic purposes. And other than a few exceptions, we don't allow changeable copy signs there. So in discussing this with Mr. Marshall and doing some research afterwards, staff has determined that there is a possibility for changeable copy signs that would fit into the corridor aesthetics being put in. So we discussed with Mr. Marshall that we would approach you here and ask that you give us the authority to initiate a change to our land development regulations to allow permanent changeable copy signs in corridors. We'd be putting some design criteria with those that they would fit, that still be monument signs like other corridor signs have to be. But this would really, I think, achieve the objective that Mr. Marshall has, and a lot of other business owners, where they could advertise specials and put in additional information on a changeable copy sign.
Bob, you're not talking about a neon sign flashing or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No.
That was my question. Can you give us a definition or an example of what a changeable copy sign is, Bob?
A changeable copy sign would be a permanent sign. It would be, as all corridor signs have to be, monument signs, but it would have the flexibility that you could put different letters on it so that you could advertise specials or advertise a sale, something like that.
So kind of like a gas station sign where they can change the prices all the time, that kind of copy?
Yeah, but more aesthetic than that.
Yeah.
Can you do it electronically?
No, not.
Why would we be opposed to it electronically where, you know, I've seen them where it's like a big screen TV, and I've also seen, I think, CVS or Walgreens, whichever one it is, up in Sebastian near the Publix up there, under their sign they've got that, you know, in red letters that they can give the temperature, the special, whatever. What's wrong with those in the corridor?
Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with them. They're not bad per se. But when we've gone through the process of doing the corridor regulations, and we had task forces at the Wabasso corridor and the State Road 60 corridor, that was one type of sign that I think the task force felt it didn't fit in.
I wonder why. Did they give a reason?
They didn't want it to look like 192.
Yep.
I remember that discussion.
Well, I think the height of the sign, I mean, a sign's a sign. If it's, the height restrictions, everything they have out there, I personally, I haven't looked at it in depth, but I don't have a problem with it. And it helps business if they can advertise, especially, I know a lot of the banks have them, they give the temperature and so on and so forth. But I think height is more of a problem in the corridor than, the sign could be made like all our other standards, it should be electronic. But I wouldn't mind taking another look at that, particularly today where businesses are hurting.
Mr. Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stan Bowling, Planning Director. Just one other issue that came up during the discussions of message signs, electronic message signs, was distractions to motorists. That's kind of the other part of it. Especially the more sophisticated ones we've seen over the last couple of decades, where there's animation and other things. So it's kind of treated as a whole category, and that was one other issue that came up in the discussion.
Well, I like the idea of moving forward and let's see what we could have come out of it. I'm not sure I'm in favor of quite where Commissioner Wheeler was, but I am in favor of seeing if we can do something without giving away all the work that's been done on our corridor task force, and that's where I sit with it. Do we need to vote on this?
Mr. Chair?
Okay.
I most certainly believe in the moving forward with changeable copy signs, and as Mr. Bowling indicated, there is a tremendous distraction element, and coming from law enforcement, I could tell you that I wholeheartedly believe in that, and I just share a tremendous concern with the advanced technology and all the animation efforts. There'd be a tremendous cost factor in erecting these and maintaining electronic signs, and I believe that we might be opening up a window of opportunity for a circus-like environment on the highways as well. And I believe the changeable copy is something that will at least enhance the marketability of the businesses. So I'd be happy to make the motion to move forward and explore all the avenues for changeable copy signs in Indian River County.
Got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, but I would like to see us still look at the electronic version, maybe, and, the electronic can only be text only with no animation or something like that, because the red lettering does show up well, and if we just take all the animation out so it's not flashing and pictures and any of that stuff, I think it would be very visible without detracting any more than just putting up little, black letters. So at least I'd like to see staff look at that and consider if there's wording that will address the distraction part that I think we all agree on.
Got a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
One question.
Yes.
The Route 60 corridor, what's the parameters on that? What are the ending and beginning of that corridor for the signs?
The State Road 60 corridor goes from the commercial industrial designated areas out west of 95, maybe from CVS all the way into the city limits at 43rd Avenue. But there's several other corridors. Wabasso corridor is actually the first one. US 1, Indian River Boulevard, Oslo Road are now also corridors and are subject to these.
And they all were modeled after the State Road 60 corridor. Basically what they did is they took the State Road 60 corridor and made it countywide with all the major arteries coming into the county.
So does it cover the whole length of US 1?
That's correct, in the unincorporated area.
In the unincorporated.
In the CVS or Walgreens, I know the Publix is in the city, but I don't know that the drugstore is. Also, a gas station out here before you get to Route 60, or before you get to I-95, has an electronic sign where they change their costs on a daily basis or moments in the last market of gas prices, where it's all electronic. Wouldn't that be a...
That's true.
I mean, I don't know that I'm for or against them. I'd like to take a relook at it because I haven't really thought about any of this until just a few minutes ago.
We'll look at that, and I think the idea that you all want explored and will evaluate is static electronic signs, basically, that can be changed just like a changeable copy sign.
Yeah, I think those signs on gas stations are much more attractive and easier to read than the letter change. But anyway, I'd just be interested in looking at the pros and cons.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That moves us to the utility services. We have item 12J1, approval to additional Materials Amendment to Work Order Authorization Directive number 2007-005 for additional labor to utility conflict resolution along US 1 South Belief Canal south of Oslo Road.
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Fletcher. Do I have a second? I'll second that. Is there any discussion?
I do have a question. Apparently, this is something that the DOT did, and so there's an urgency to repair it, but I guess I want to know if we're going to come back and get the money from DOT.
Welcome, Ms. Corinthy.
Good morning. Cindy Correnti, Assistant Director of Utilities. Yes, approximately $70,000 of this request is for damage that we feel the FDOT contractor is liable for. We are working with FDOT to try to resolve that. Of course, they have their side of the story as we have our side of the story. So we're working with them now to try to resolve that and hope to come to some compromise on at least that approximately $70,000 portion of this item.
And I appreciate all your efforts to recover some funding back to our citizens.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Next, we have item 12J2, which is the award of bid for biosolids facilities.
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien and a second from Commissioner Fletcher.
Just a comment. I was
Yes,
very
sir.
glad to see that the winning bid was the Vero Beach Company.
And one that has done work with the county in the past and we're very satisfied with. Congratulations. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I realize we have a motion and a second,
Yes,
Chair, but I would like to have Mr. Olson just give us a brief on it so the public is aware of this positive motion that's going forward, if it should pass.
Certainly appreciate it. Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. This is a project that's long been in coming. I see Freddie Wolfert. Freddie Wolfert can tell you personally how important this is. He and I have met at the site many, many times, and it's kind of one of those things, a promise made, a promise kept, and we're finally there at this point. So it's one of those things that we're glad to see come to fruition like this. And again, like you say, we've got a good local company that's done a lot of work with us, and we're glad to see it happen.
Mr. Chair, this is a true quality of life project, and as Mr. Olson says, a commitment, a promise fulfilled, and I'm pleased that it's moving forward and going to be moving forward so quickly. Mr. Wolf.
Freddie Wolf, 4590 57th Avenue. I just want to publicly thank Eric for a man who made a promise, kept a promise, and I really appreciate that, and the citizens of the Gifford area appreciate it. For quite some time, we were kind of putting out fires when individuals were complaining about the stench and things that were happening there in that area, and Eric and his staff took it on themselves, sometime in the cold, sometime in the rain, to come out and hold in the middle of the field meetings so that individuals can come out and actually voice their concerns to Eric, and Eric will get back with them and some resolutions. So I just want to stand on behalf of the Progressive Civic League of Gifford and the Gifford citizens, say thank you so very much for keeping your word. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us to the approval of the change order for San Sebastian Springs Water Assessment Project, UCP 3014, WIP number 473-169-000-08502, bid number 2008-072.
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Fletcher and a second from Commissioner O'Brien. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passed unanimously. County Attorney's Matters. We have let's start with the one that's on there, and then we'll go to the emergency item that was added. This is the unconditional officer for parcel of property owned by Stephen and Shelley Ryan at 6775 66th Avenue. Mr. DeBarle, welcome.
Commissioner?
There it goes.
Thank you. Morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. This is an unconditional offer for a parcel of property located on 66th Avenue. It's owned by Stephen and Shelley Ryan. It's, as you can see on the Elmo, it's a 5-acre parcel. The take would be from the east section of the property. It will be about an acre, just shy of an acre, 0.966 acres. There is a Murphy reservation that encumbers this property in the amount of 0.61 acres. There are a number of structures in the proposed area of take, including a brick fence, wire fence, landscaping, things like that. We had an appraisal on the entire property. That value came out to be $615,000, with the partial take appraised at $82,300. There were some severance damages, although they were lower than most that you've seen recently because of the location of the property. You see the house is set back pretty well from 66th Avenue, and so that led to the lower severance damages in this appraisal. Due to the size and the shape of the parcel and the location on the property, we are not proposing a whole take on this structure. We're just recommending a partial. If you add in the 15% incentive for early settlement, we're recommending an unconditional offer be made to Mr. and Mrs. Ryan at a price of $94,645 just for the partial take.
Commissioners, any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari and second from Commissioner Flesher to approve the unconditional offer.
Question, did that include the Murphy deed, or was that not part of this?
That is ignoring the Murphy. We're giving full value to the property.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
That moves us to the next portion of the county attorney's matters, which has to do with the funding issues and the letters of credit. Mr. Collins?
Mr. Chairman, at last Thursday's Economic Summit and Goals and Visioning meeting, there was a consensus to bring forward an emergency ordinance to address the impact of the international credit crisis on the local development community. In particular, local developers are being turned down by banks when they request extensions on letters of credit that either support warranties of their subdivision-required improvements or future sidewalk construction. And to address that, the Community Development Department drafted certain amendments that would allow annual sidewalk security reductions and also deferral of the sidewalk construction and posting of sidewalk construction security if certain conditions are met. Another amendment would allow reductions in the posted maintenance security that could be made at the end of year one of the 3-year warranty period, and also deferral of paving and drainage warranty security if certain criteria are met. Also, site plan approvals are now limited to 12 months, and this amendment would extend that approval time limitation to 24 months. Because this is an emergency ordinance, it would require enactment by a 4/5 vote of the board if the board declares an emergency exists and that the immediate enactment of the ordinance is necessary. Our budget office provided us information that we have approximately 9 separate development projects that are under the gun to have $1.1 million of security drawn on against their letters of credit within the next 30 days. And because of that, we're bringing forward this ordinance and suggesting that you conduct a public hearing to consider it, any necessary amendments. And if it's not adopted today, it could be considered and brought back next week. But we'd also like you to note that of those 9 projects in the backup, budget was scheduled to call 2 letters of credit on next Monday. The letters of credit don't expire until a week or 2 later, so if you choose not to act today, I'd like direction that the budget office delay until after next week in calling those letters of credit.
That was my biggest concern is there's a lot of backup information in just getting this. I do believe it is an emergency, and that's why I wanted to put it on the agenda. There's a lot of moving parts in this that I'd like to explore a little bit more. Not being able to make a motion.
I'd be happy to make a motion to table it for a week.
Okay.
With the specific delay called for by attorney of a week and calling letters of credits.
Okay.
I think there may be a couple people that are in the audience today who might want to
I'll give them
comment on it. I
opportunity
wouldn't
to.
mind hearing from them now,
Okay.
given that we only have a week to think about it.
Second that.
Motion.
Okay, we've got a motion from Commissioner Solari to table this, and then...
For 1 week.
For 1 week. And actually, probably the best thing to do is so we can discuss it would be to postpone this until the next meeting versus the table.
I think there may...
Semantics, yeah.
I think there may be some advantage in getting some input now so that we're not trying to redraft it.
That's why I wanted to postpone it, because the motion to table is not debatable or amendable.
Okay, then I'll amend the motion to a motion to postpone for 1 week, including the delay in calling.
We have a motion to postpone to a time certain. That was from Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Flesher, and is now open for discussion. At this time, we have some people from the audience, can you, if you don't mind, would you incorporate that and to direct them not to call the letter of credit on Monday?
Yeah,
was that in there?
Yes, the delay was in there.
Okay, just making sure, and your second included that.
Second is also included.
Yes.
And I don't think they're critical, but I tell you, if it expires, we lose it. That's the only thing. And I know that they aren't critical. I don't think
As I
they're
understood
critical.
from Mr. Collins, we have that.
The one that was scheduled, the first one scheduled for draw on Monday has an expiration date of February 28th.
Okay. Well,
so we've got about 12 days there. The second one has an expiration date of March 1st, so we've got about 13 days.
All right. Mr. Barquette, welcome.
Thank you, Bruce Barquette. I practice at 756 Beachland Boulevard, and I appreciate that clarification. I want to make sure that the letters weren't called in the interim. I also just wanted to express my appreciation for the reception that our proposals have received with the board and with the staff, that you brought it forward in a timely manner and that you're going to consider them. I think this is a great example of the way the legislative process is supposed to work, and I appreciate the diligence and the effort, especially by Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Solari for having a summit. And I will say that if there's no changes to the ordinances, if there are no changes to the ordinances, I'd be happy. If we have a week, I might suggest a tweak or two, but if nothing changes, y'all have done a great job.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Anybody would like to comment on the ordinance to help make it better, the postponement, or whether you'd like for us to pull your bond?
Good morning. Jeff Thompson, Seville Avenue, Vero Beach. A couple things. I really appreciate y'all acting as quickly as you've done. This is really encouraging. There's a couple items. On the maintenance bond issue, I'm concerned about, the second and third year. There's a lot of checks and balances between the developer hiring a private engineer and having county inspections and all this. I'm concerned that the second and third year could be construed as, an economic development issue. I mean, somebody comes into this county and wants to build a 40-acre industrial subdivision, and roads in the industrial subdivision, I'm pretty sure, from my instance, are not being accepted by the county. So it becomes a private road matter. So, to put up a bond for 1, 2, and 3 years on a private road, I'm not sure if that's the way to go. 42nd Place is a private road at an inner industrial center, and I think that's something that, honestly, you all should look at. In regards to, there's a couple things here. It says, that the owner can hire his engineer to write a letter to reduce the maintenance bond from 25 to 5%. I think that should be an automatic thing. I don't think the owner or developer should all of a sudden turn around and have to spend money with an engineer to write a letter that... I like engineers. They're good people. They've done a lot of good work out here. I'll be honest with you. And I like Mr. Barquette, but there's a dollar figure that goes with every billable hour.
Absolutely.
And every letter. Those are all things that I think we should look at. Like I said, the county does a tremendous amount of inspections on roads now. I mean, me as an owner, small developer, I put my trust in the contractor to do the right thing, the engineer to do the right thing, and the county to oversee it, to make sure that they're doing the right thing. Because I don't know, I can clear a lot probably with a piece of equipment, but I don't know how many times you got to roll it, what the compaction rate is. All these things
roll into this. I'd like to just, and I thank you all, if you're going to give us another week to try to fine tune some of these items and maybe look at this as a bigger picture, not just for, like I said last Thursday, for Jeff Thompson and Bureau Millwork. It's not about me. It's about doing what's right and what's right down the road, okay? And we got an opportunity to do something to make it right, and I really appreciate you all taking another look at this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Meckley, welcome. Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Good morning, Chuck Meckley, 1999 Point West Drive, and I want to thank the commission. I want to thank Will, County Administrator Joe Baird. I have to say, you know, Stan and Bob have been accessible to discuss this issue, and I appreciate that very much. And I'm not clear, and I guess what I'd like to ask, the utility department has had, as long as I can remember, a system in place where the contractor posts the first year as a maintenance bond, and we had forwarded some paperwork. I know there had been some discussion that concept might be incorporated in this, and I'm not clear with what's been written if it is or isn't.
I don't think it is. Right now we have utilities warranted for a period of 1 year. We have paving and drainage warranted for a period of 3 years. And I think that came out of some problems that we had with the Oak Chase development, and specifically, we never really have had problems with utilities failing once they've passed the testing and inspections and been turned over. And that may be the reason.
And what I would hope to do is that we would consider how the utility department does it in the first year concept, because again, this is a materials and workmanship type concept. And if you take a look actually as to how they handle this, the suppliers that bring the materials out, they'll warranty to the contractor for a 1 year period of time, and then the contractor, as it follows through, warranties craftsmanship or workmanship back to the county as they do with the utility. And I would just like us to take a look at how that works, because I don't want to lose sight that it's over materials and workmanship, because that's the issue when we post these sort of concepts. And I would just like to see that we take that into consideration with this, because again, it becomes something that has been part of how a contractor would perform in previous county work always. And that's all I'd like to do, is see us take that into consideration, because today, for a developer to get a letter of credit, and we'll bring some bankers in next week as well to discuss this, you got to put up, you want a $100,000 letter of credit, you put up $100,000 of cash. In the past, there had always been a situation, depending on the project, that there was equity in the project, that they would extend letters of credit because work was just moving along. Things have changed. The federal guidelines have changed. The banking regulations have changed. And maybe to the good, maybe things were too loose. Maybe that's part of the problem today. But, you know, in this, I appreciate the fact that some people might take sections of the project and not move them forward, as with the East Village of Point West, where there's no homes, no anything. And right now, there's not, in my opinion, at our community, a need to bring on more residential in a market that's already stressed. So we just want to take that and mothball it for the time period, because the market needs to come back some. Our county needs to stabilize some to be able to bring other product on, and I appreciate that being in this consideration as well. So I was just hoping that during this next week we might be able to work through and look at some of these issues as the final one might come in.
Mr. Mecklin, am I understanding that you'd like to see the warranty and guarantee period on paving and drainage reduced to 1 year as it is with utilities?
That would be my preference, absolutely. I believe
I'd
the
like
discussion.
some guidance from the board.
Sure. I'll tell you, what I'd like to do is if, in fact, and I believe you're right, I remember going back to 2004, if I'm not mistaken, this ordinance was basically created for Oak Chase. And I'd like to know whether we've had any, if that is the case, and if we created an entire ordinance for one subdivision, that may be a vast overreaction. But more importantly, moving to the next step, have we had any of these letters of credit called in the past years since the ordinance was created that in fact would justify the existence of this ordinance, and see if this was just one contractor doing something bad in one subdivision that we have really overreacted to. That would be what I'd like the historical perspective, as well as the...
We've had a lot of letters of credit called in the last couple of years as Eagle Trace, the Enclave, Lexington Place, but in most cases those were developments that weren't even completed, let alone in the warranty period.
And that's what I'm saying. So what I'm trying to do is, okay, for Commissioner Solari's sake, how's that? Me being a new commissioner, help bring him up to speed and show the historical aspects of it so that we can make an educated decision.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that concern, Mr. Chairman, and I understand where it's coming from. Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner O'Brien.
As part of the work on this, staff provided me the copy of the staff backup back in March 8th of 2005 when we changed this from 1 year to 3 years. And at that point, staff had 12 projects where the board had to take some action regarding this. So that's, I think it's, Oak Chase might have been the most big one, but apparently according to staff they had 12 that did require board action. Also today, on the consent agenda, we approved some work being done at the Eagle Trace, which did include some road work, some asphalt repair, and some curb repair. So it can go a couple years. I think the problem we run into, and Mr. Thompson with Vero Millworks is a great example. He built the road. He's had an active industrial site working for the last 2 years. He's had tractor-trailer trucks coming down there almost every day, delivery trucks, work trucks. So the road has been used and it's held up fine. You'd like to be able to give some flexibility, say, okay, this road has been tested, there's no catastrophic failures, and maybe even waive the rest of the requirement because the road has been tested and held up to traffic. Then we have, and the sign of the times, we currently have some subdivisions that the roads were put in, and then that's it. There's been no activity. There's been no cement trucks, lumber delivery trucks, work trucks. So we don't know, even though they've been sitting there for a year or two, whether they'll hold up to any traffic. And I think that's why we do need to at least go 3 years to try to make sure we can get those roads tested. So we're kind of, really stuck between a couple of extremes there.
I wonder exactly what I'm hearing you say is you wish you could use some common sense, or I wish I could use some common sense.
And maybe we could provide some flexibility here where after a year or two, if the engineer goes out and says, yeah, this road has been hammered, it's held up, and the only thing we see is normal wear and tear, we can waive the remaining bond. And then they can also go out and look and say, yeah, well, it looks nice, but it hadn't had anything on it. We want to hold the security on it, maybe at a reduced rate, but still give staff that flexibility.
And that's an excellent point, and that almost boils down to some of the input that came out of the zoning board of adjustments almost that we talked about at our economic summit a little bit, with the trees being 5 inches too short. And if there's a way, Mr. Collins, of us crafting this so that in fact it needs to come back before us, it could simply be on a case-by-case basis. Like, I don't know how to sprinkle common sense into an ordinance, but there ought to be a way we could do this and to make it work. Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah. My understanding is this warranty kicks in after they get the CO and everything's completed. And I know that they're having trouble getting 3-year bonds or tying up credit for 3 years, and I agree with that. I think it's a problem, and it was done basically for a couple of developments. I think Citrus Springs was another one we had some problems with, and things were really booming then too, and so there was more people in the pot than there is today. But what if we had a 1-year bond based on the inspection at the end of that year that's renewable if the inspection's not satisfactory? So you get 1 year bond at a time, and at the end of that 1 year you inspect it, and if it's good we write it off and we don't need the letter of credit. In other words, it's reevaluated annually, and that would lose if they're done the first year and everything's done, then they get their letter of credit back and it's over. If it's not, we got to go forward, renew it for the second year.
That's free.
And I appreciate that consideration very much, and I would hope that first year we could look at it like the utility department does, because there is where, in a normal procedure, when we would have a pipe job done or a utility job, in years past, when I was involved with Belvedere Construction up here doing utility work, the utility contractor would post a bond, and what we did is we had sent to the county an example of one. It's a maintenance bond that the county accepted, and the language is already in the policy, I guess you'd say, at Indian River County. And just to look at that, because what happens is that first year then, where the biggest time period or failure that could possibly happen goes back to either the material or the workmanship that was performed on the job. Just like you build a house, your general contractor has a 1-year warranty, and they'll come back and fix something. It's the same sort of concept in a procedural surety situation that would be acceptable to Mr. Collins and to the county.
Okay. Commissioner Solari?
I can see why I asked this to be tabled for a week. On this matter here that you're talking about on the bond, I think I like Commissioner Wheeler's idea, but I think we need to structure it so that the bond is dropped unless.
And we're talking letters of credit,
not bonds.
Okay, the letters of credit after the CO.
No.
Well, no,
we actually take warranty bonds.
Oh, we do? Okay, I thought we
And we
eliminated
can accomplish that through the contractor.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the reason for this is so that there's greater surety on the part of the people that are doing the development and their bankers and the people have to support these LCs and bonds, that if the reasonable things are done and the right things are done, that it won't be held up.
Yeah.
So I just want it weighted that way. The presumption then clearly being that unless something bad happens, the bond or the LC requirements will be dropped.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate that, and I can fully support. I believe that we can all embrace and support the 1-year permit and roadway assessment. I did discuss that with Will Collins, and as far as a 1, 2, and 3 year program, and it was quickly discussed that yes, defects are usually identified in the first year, but the true challenges might come out in the 3rd year. And when I asked for a review on how many we have had, I don't believe we've had all that many, and that the true challenges were identified in workmanship in the first year. And I think we can move on quickly and hope to and eager to address this next week.
Ms. Chandler, name and address for the record, please.
Penny Chandler. I'm with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And I just want to say and this goes for all 5 of you, how great this is, that in 2 business days you have turned around items that came out of an economic summit and bring things forward today. We appreciate, the business community truly appreciates the partnership that we're seeing, and the concern that each of you are expressing for what's going on in the economy. And also just to say that from the Chamber point of view, we appreciate the additional time that you're talking about in allowing the business community to take a look at the details. But more than that, just to express our appreciation for the concern that you've shown and the immediacy in which you've reacted to the economic conditions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Penny. Any other discussion, commissioners? Welcome. Joe, name and address for the record, please.
Joseph Paladin, President of Atlantic Coast Construction and Development. On the sidewalk bonds, which is one of the issues that's involved in this, and we've had a couple problems in the last several months with developers not completing their sidewalks in the subdivision. And we don't want to hold the people that live there from having the ability to have a sidewalk through their community. But one of the things is that in subdivisions where you have areas that there's no construction being done, and in my opinion, in some subdivisions I'm familiar with, there won't be any construction being done for the next 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years maybe. It sort of makes no sense to me or fair to have a sidewalk bond which is cash, letter of credit, as Mr. Meckling just brought forward. That's cash, basically. So in a couple instances, we actually have checks submitted to the county where they're actually holding our cash. If you're not going to do any building for the next several years, I think if there's some way of rewording this, if it's not in an area where you have houses and construction going on. Maybe we can say when you pull the first permit on a street, or when you pull the first permit on a block where it would affect the rest of the community, maybe then you go ahead and enact this bond or this support. Meanwhile, if they have your money tied up for 5, 6, 7 years.
I think we've got it covered the way the planning department's drafted it. It allows the developer to define an area of the subdivision where construction and security posting are to be deferred, and agrees not to sell any lots or obtain building permits for construction within the deferral area until the sidewalks are constructed or security is posted. So I think their intent was, if there are areas where there are houses, the sidewalk should be there. But if you're going to put a portion of your project into limbo, hibernation, whatever you want to call it, you can defer posting that security on those areas with an agreement not to build until the market comes back and you're willing to post the security.
And I agree with that. There's a couple of gray areas there, and I think the way you explained is very good. I think any common area sidewalks should certainly be put in, because everybody has the ability to have access to those. But if a developer has sold all of his lots in an area, and that builder hasn't pulled any permits in the last 2 or 3 years, the developer has to put up the performance letter of credit in order to get a CC on the subdivision to close on those lots. The builder could care less if that developer's money's tied up for 5 or 6 or 7 years, because he has no intentions of building. So I'm saying that what you said makes sense, but I don't know if it covers that gray area.
Yeah, and the problem is, if you've transferred lots, then a building permit could be applied for at any time. You no longer have control over that phase of the subdivision and wouldn't qualify for the deferral. But I think we also have had, at least with the warranty agreements, we allow either the developer or the contractor to put up the security, and there may be some kind of an approach that we can't figure out today, but we can think about in the next week.
That's kind of where I'm thinking we should head with this, is given, I don't want to, I mean, in the event the developer can sell some lots to a builder, but the developer can't come up with the irrevocable letter of credit or the bond of some kind, I don't want to hold up that transfer to be able to allow them to move forward. So, but we don't have to decide that today?
No, we don't. I think that maybe if we just have the ability to come before you all on a case-by-case basis and make that decision on some common sense being sprinkled into it.
Well, hopefully we can do that and have it actually in writing so that we have rules that versus a case-by-case, but I understand that special instance that you're talking about that needs consideration.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just, Bruce Barquette and I and Bob and Stan met on this very issue a couple weeks ago, and a lot of this wording, this deferral area, came from that meeting. Certainly, Mr. Barquette will probably give us some more comments as we go forward, but I think a lot of this was drafted with that very situation in mind, where you can, the developer can just actually identify by the lot number, lots 50 through 100, we're going to defer and not move forward until such time security is posted. So, Bruce, certainly your comments will be welcome here, but this is what we addressed a couple weeks ago.
No, and that's what I was going to say. This is exactly what we addressed, and it was drafted exactly as we discussed it. Now, I only wanted to leave you with this. We could tweak it forever, but make sure you pass something next week. Yeah. We do have an emergency.
Sure.
It does need to be passed.
Sure.
Do you think, Bruce, that if we do all this, it'll cut into your business?
It's okay.
Mr. Chairman, I should put on the record that because this is an emergency ordinance and we waive the normal 10-day notice time, it does require that it be passed by a 4/5 majority of the commission.
For today, for the postponement, or at the next meeting?
Next meeting.
We're clear on that, I think. Yes.
We fully understand.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Meckling, any final comments?
Chuck Meckling, and if I could just ask one question. In the way it's written, and let's take, for instance, a community that has sidewalks on both sides of the street, and if one system of the sidewalk is completed 100%, that is where all the common areas are and all the recreational facilities are, and on the other side of the street there's some gaps, the gaps could be done as the builder builds out without posting that, because you have a complete sidewalk system within the community that goes throughout the community. and that encompasses all the recreational and common areas of the community. And it's more of a question, and it was not clear in the paperwork.
I'd have to defer to our planners and engineers on that type of thing.
So we could discuss that over the next week?
That's exactly why we're postponing it, I think, to be able to hammer all these out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Commissioners, all those in favor of postponing this till the next meeting and to not call the letters of credit that we were going to do on Monday, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
I just said one, you said not calling,
Not call-
delaying calling.
Okay, that's good enough. That's what I meant. All right, now we have the, I'll tell you what, Commissioners, we have two more items. Typically, that we're past our break time, but we have two more items that if you would indulge me, I'd like to help move forward with this. We have the consideration of the submitted application. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Debbie Mayfield was a Board of County Commissioners appointee on the Economic Development Council. Due to her legislative duties, she indicated she would not be able to continue to sit on the EDC. Back on January 20th of 2009, that opening was announced and read for the record. As per our resolution 2008-112, the 14-day open period expired last Tuesday, and so I bring forward the applicants for the open BCC appointee on the EDC. Actually, we've got quite a few very well qualified candidates here. Their applications and resumes and such are available to all the commissioners as additional backup. Speaking for myself, I would like to nominate Mr. Scott Stradley as the BCC appointee.
And I will second that and have additional information.
Sure. Commissioner O'Brien, were you finished?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, I just needed to make an announcement. Late last night and early this morning, I received a notification and information from Mr. Harry Zambelli, who has respectfully withdrawn his application and opportunity. I don't know if that will change or alter anyone's thought process. However, I could not, due to the timeliness of the notification, I could not get that to you until this time.
Okay. Commissioner, this is something you're ready for a vote on? Or this?
Well, I guess we've got a nomination and a second, and I guess we should see if there's anyone, if another commissioner wants to make another nomination.
If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of yes. Oh, was that an aye? No. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously.
And, Mr. Chairman, I just would like to reiterate, there was a lot of very, very good qualified candidates here. I want to thank all of them publicly here for their interest, and we'll keep their applications in the file, and if we get another opening, we'll be glad to bring them forward again. But just appreciate everybody showing a great interest in serving the community as a advisory committee member.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Solari.
Well done.
Recently, I heard that the city of Vero Beach is once again thinking about moving the wastewater treatment facility, and it turns out that I believe that the county is in good shape to help the city of Vero Beach with that, and I'd like the board's approval to ask the utility department to come before us next week with a presentation on the pros and cons of regionalization of the sewer and water of Indian River County, and also basically like the board to have Mr. Olson have permission to discuss this a little bit preliminarily with the city of Vero Beach, just to dispel any rumors or anything like that.
I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's appropriate for us to give staff direction as much as it would be the county administrator.
The county administrator is fine.
And we'll
be happy to second that.
I'll mention that they evidently a similar proposal like this just came forward Thursday from our utilities committee. And with that said, I'd just like to...
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the county administrator to ask Eric if a week is enough time, or he might need a little bit more time before he comes back.
I think a week's next time, but is enough time based on conversations I've had. So.
Okay.
And again, this is preliminary discussions about seeing not necessarily, I guess, the feasibility, but also the willingness. It could be very feasible, and we'd be very willing, but unless there's some motivation on the other side, Mr. Olson.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. We could be prepared next week. I mean, we could flesh it out. I just want to make clear that this is just generalized information. We do have some basic thoughts already, and so we can put it together in time for that.
utility term?
Yeah,
Flush it out?
flushing
Flush it out. Flush it out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
May
Okay.
not be engineering terms.
Yes. So I guess we'll move forward so we can move this off center and hopefully get some good dialogue. All those in favor of directing the county administrator to have utilities look into a more of a cooperative agreement, perhaps to be able to consolidate the utilities of Indian River County and the city of Vero Beach, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Commissioners, if there's no further business to be transacted at this time, I now declare this
I'd
meeting.
just like to congratulate you for having a speedy meeting today, Wesley. You're really coming along nicely.
Commissioner, I appreciate it, but that still should have been an hour meeting, but I do appreciate the plug there. I now declare this meeting adjourned.